Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. So I am on my way to Publix. It's a chain of grocery stores that we have here in the South, or at least I think they're just in the South. I really don't know their region, their stretch there. But today is June 5th. So if it's not clicking in your head what that means today is 6-5 day. Now, for a lot of y'all been around for a while, as far as subscribers to my channel, and you know how big a fan I am of the 6.5 Creedmoor, and that's one of those that's such a polarizing cartridge, right? People, when you talk about it, people either love it or they hate it. Not exactly sure why they hate it. I haven't really heard a good reason to dislike it when it's used appropriately, right? Like I think it's just like a Glock, right? I kind of compare the 6.5 Creedmoor, the cartridge, to a Glock in the handgun world, right? Because you've got Glock fanboys and people that swear by them, right? It's the end all be all when it comes to handguns. Well, and then the same goes for the rifle side of the house, right? You got people that are like, oh, you know, the most perfect cartridge ever, right? 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that for anything smaller than an elk, and I know people that have taken elk with a 6.5 Creedmoor. I've talked to a few guys at the range that have moved here. Well, this dude's just riding a bike across the 4-lane road here. He's really tempting fate. So, but I've talked to guys at the range, you know, that have killed elk with a 6.5 Creedmoor using something like a 127 grain Barnes LRX bullet, right? So, it can definitely, you know, it's definitely capable of taking elk size game. But I think that's where a lot of people start to draw the line, in terms of that's where you really start to see people get fired up, right? When you're mentioning the size of the animal that cartridge is really well suited for. And in my opinion, it is really well suited for anything below that, right? So if you're going to be chasing whitetail deer, any of the deer variants, pronghorn, you know, any of that stuff, right? It's, and again, in my opinion, and I'm a nobody who just likes to turn on a camera and make videos and post them on YouTube, but I hunt whitetail deer and hogs in Alabama, and you know, I've hunted in Tennessee, and let's see, hoping to go on a hunt the plan is to go on a hunt in Kentucky this year, whitetail hunt, and I haven't really decided what cartridge to take. But when it comes to that size game animal, I really feel like the 6.5 Creedmoor that's pretty much a sweet spot, because the recoil is very mild. You know, you're running anywhere from, like, depending on the powder, you know, you're running 38 up to 44, 45. You can go a little bit higher, you know, in your charge weight, somewhere in that range. So you're talking low 40s and in terms of your powder charge. And that's just, it's a very mild recoiling round. It's a great round to step up the frontal diameter of the bullet, in terms of, you know, if you've got somebody, a new shooter, you're wanting to get somebody into hunting, somebody that's recoil sensitive, you know, a 243 Winchester, at least in the Southeast, that is like everyone's go-to in terms of, hey, your first cartridge to go deer hunt with. You talk to a lot of people, right, that you run into, especially if you go to Cabela's or Mr. Big Guns or, you know, Academy Sports, you go to a gun store or something, you ask them what their first gun was, it was either a 30-06, which I hate, or it was a 243 Winchester. Those are the two, like, that's it. There's almost no in between. Every now and then you'll have somebody that's like, oh, it was a 25-06, or, you know, it was a 270, right? Every now and then you'll have somebody that's a little bit different, but for the most part, here in the Southeast, that's typically the way it goes. It's either the 06 or the 243. And you know, the 243, Man, that thing's been stacking deer since it was, commercially released, right? So, and probably prior to that in wildcat form. But yeah, it's just that's a great round. But if you want something that has a little bit larger frontal, diameter on the bullet, right, then the 6.5 is obviously the next best, or I guess a step up, we'll say, right? It's only a 0.5 millimeter larger, but bigger is better, right? So I'm trying to find a place to park now. That's why I'm slightly distracted in the Publix parking lot. Yeah, and it strikes a really good balance with sectional density. That's another thing that I think is often overlooked by people, right? When in terms of choosing a cartridge, sectional density is really just it's just a number, right? It's just a number based off a formula. So it doesn't kill the deer, right? It doesn't make the deer any more deader, but what it does do, all things being equal, is simply a measurement of a projectile's ability to penetrate, right? And the higher the number, the better. You have to put that in air quotes. The better it is, because to really truly gauge that, right, everything would have to be equal. Your bullet construction and all that across multiple cartridges, and then theoretically you would see better performance out of a higher sectional density projectile versus a lower sectional density projectile, right? If you're shooting into the exact same media, same bullet construction, blah blah blah, right? All that stuff. So, but the 6.5 Creedmoor, it strikes a really good balance in like the 140 class of bullets, which is what the Creedmoor really shines with, in my opinion. 130 to 140 has a high sectional density relative to its caliber, right? So you can go and look at things like 7 millimeter, something like a 308, right? You have to get above like up in the 168 grain and heavier range in 308 to get similar sectional density numbers that you would get with something like, I think it's like a 130 6.5 bullet, something like that. You'll have to go back and double check me on that, and if I'm wrong, I know somebody will point it out, and I'm glad you will. But you can go look that up, right? Hornady's load manual is a great source for information. They've got the sectional density numbers listed. Most load sources do, but it's just when you go and compare, right, you'll see that for the recoil, your 6.5 Creedmoor typically, right, is going to be a better option if you're looking for that good balance of recoil versus sectional density for the projectile, right? And of course there's more to it than that, but just again, all things being equal, to get similar numbers, right, that's when you have to start stepping it up a notch. When you go up higher in caliber, you got to go heavier in weight, because it's just a mathematical formula, right? So it's proportional all along that spectrum. So the heavier or the larger you go, the heavier you have to go to gain that sectional density, right, increase. Well, the 6.5 Creedmoor, like I said, just kind of strikes that balance. So it's a great cartridge. I've killed several deer with it. It is probably my #1 recommendation for people that are looking to get either looking to get a new rifle. If they hunt anything smaller than an elk, it's just kind of my standard go-to, like, hey, go get a 6.5 Creedmoor, shoot. If you're not going to hand load, shoot some premium ammunition, something along the lines of like a Hornady SST. Great. I actually did a video on a recovered bullet, the 129 grain SST. You guys go find that. I think it's in my 6.5 Creedmoor playlist. I actually show the bullet that I recovered, and I show the velocity and all that, the distance on the shot and all that fun stuff. So that was actually pretty cool. I'm glad I was able to recover that. And then so something like that, like an SST, big fan of those bullets. A Nosler ballistic tip, right, either the 120, 140, I'd probably go with a 140. If you want a little bit more velocity, 120. And then, you know, outside of that, something along the lines of Barnes, any solid copper, in my opinion, is going to be hard to beat. If you can get your hands on, don't know if Speer, I'll have to double check. Don't know if Speer makes a factory gold dot, the 140 gold dot. I don't know if they have a factory ammunition offering, but for hand loaders, man, that and the Barnes, those two bullets, like the 130 tip TSX, or the 127 grain LRX, one of those two, either those two for Barnes or the Speer gold dot, the 140 grain, they're going the wrong way. Man, come on, people. Going the wrong way down the parking lot. So yeah, one of those two options, and you won't go wrong. It'll deliver great penetration on whatever animal you're shooting, right? Again, I have to preface this every single time I say this: elk size and down, or smaller than an elk, right? So below elk size game. That way everybody in the comments don't freak out. But what that allows is good performance on not optimal shots, right? So if you have a hard quartering 2-shot or something like that, biggest buck of your life, and it's a hard quartering 2-shot, you know, you want to be able to put that thing right on the chest and just cave it in. And a Barnes or something like the Speer gold dot, it'll get the job done, right? It's really tough construction. It's going to allow for great penetration. So, and the 6.5 Creedmoor has more than enough horsepower. You know, 140 grain bullet, factory ammunition, probably going above 2,700 feet per second, somewhere in that range. That's dead deer all day long, especially with standard, what I'll call standard, normal hunting distances. But yeah, so that's where we're going to leave it. I got to get in Publix, pick out a few things. So happy 6.5 day, guys. Don't forget, go to Mr. Big Guns in Huntsville to get all of your reloading / firearm needs. Also factory ammunition. It was funny, a guy in the comments of one of my other videos, he was like, hey, so I went and checked out Mr. Big Guns. They didn't have any primers. This was like a couple weeks ago, but they did have 7 PRC factory ammo in stock, and he couldn't believe that. So I've been telling you guys, quit sleeping on them. If you're looking for something, go check them out. I know they did post earlier today on their Facebook page that they got in a huge shipment, a big shipment of CCI number 500. I think those are the large pistol primers, maybe. So whatever it is, they got in several bricks, a bunch of bricks of the CCI 500 pistol primers. So that's it. That's where we're going to leave it. Hope you guys like the 6.5 Creedmoor as much as I do. And if you don't, then let me know what you prefer, right? For something smaller than an elk, keep that in mind, guys, something smaller than an elk. Because what I don't want to have somebody do is comment down below and say, oh man, the 6.5 Creedmoor is garbage, and what's better is a 300, freaking Thunder Thumper, because that's what you need to go kill an elk. That's not what I'm talking about. Anything below that, I think the 6.5 Creedmoor gets the job done. So, and if you don't think that, I'd like to hear about it. So, all right, that's it. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch you next time.